The notification pinged at 2:47 a.m. while I graded essays on my laptop. Faculty portal alert, student login detected from unauthorized location. I rubbed my tired eyes, expecting another technical glitch. The university's ancient systems flagged everything these days. But this wasn't a glitch. The alert showed Liam Harper accessing his student account from my home IP address, my home, my network, at nearly 3 in the morning. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold as the implications crystallized. Liam wasn't here. I was alone in my study while Zoya slept upstairs. Or so I thought. My fingers moved automatically, accessing the administrative portal that came with my department chair privileges. Export access logs, filter by student ID, generate timestamp report. The data painted a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. Liam's account had been accessed from my home network 47 times over the past 3 months. Always late at night, always when I thought Zoya was asleep. The house creaked above me, footsteps in the hallway, the bathroom door closing with a soft click. I minimized the portal window and opened a new browser tab, my academic instincts kicking in. Research, evidence, documentation. If I was going to confront this, I needed facts, not suspicions. Liam Harper, 22 years old, senior English major, my star student until this semester, when his work had inexplicably declined. He'd missed conferences, submitted late papers, and seemed distracted during seminars. I'd attributed it to senioritis or personal issues. Now I understood the personal issues. I pulled up his recent submissions, cross-referencing the timestamps with the network logs. Every late paper coincided with a night he'd accessed his account from my house. The pattern was undeniable. "Mason, you're up late." Zoya's voice from the doorway made me jump. She stood silhouetted against the hallway light, wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary. Her dark hair was tousled, but not from sleep. There was something else, a flush to her cheeks, a brightness in her eyes that I recognized from our early days together. "Grading," I said, gesturing at the stack of papers beside my laptop. "You know how it is." She padded into the room, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. "You work too hard. Come to bed. In a minute." She leaned over my shoulder, her hand resting on my back. I could smell her perfume, the expensive one she saved for special occasions. Why was she wearing perfume at 3 in the morning? "What are you working on?" she asked, her eyes scanning the screen. I'd closed the portal window, but muscle memory made me tilt the laptop away from her. "Final papers, nothing exciting." She pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "Don't stay up too much longer." I waited until her footsteps faded upstairs, then reopened the portal. The evidence was still there, cold and clinical in its clarity. But I needed more than login records. The university's network monitoring system was more sophisticated than most students realized. As department chair, I had access to traffic logs, device fingerprints, and connection patterns. It took me an hour to piece together the full picture. Liam's phone had been connecting to my home Wi-Fi for months. The device logs showed extended sessions, hours at a time. He wasn't just checking email or submitting assignments. He was here, in my house, using my network while I graded papers or prepared lectures in my study, while my wife entertained him upstairs. I exported everything: logs, timestamps, device identifiers, connection patterns, saved it all to an encrypted drive, and uploaded backups to 3 different cloud accounts. 20 years in academia had taught me the value of documentation. The house was quiet now, as Zoya's breathing had settled into the deep rhythm of sleep, or a convincing imitation of it. I sat in my study, surrounded by the detritus of my academic life: books, papers, coffee cups, the accumulated weight of a career spent analyzing other people's stories. Now I was living in one. The smart thing would be to confront them, demand explanations, fight for my marriage. That's what the advice columns and therapy websites would recommend. Communication, counseling, working through the betrayal. But I wasn't feeling smart. I was feeling something else entirely. A cold, calculating anger that surprised me with its clarity. Zoya had made her choice. Liam had made his. They'd been making it for months, right under my nose, in my own home. Now it was my turn to choose. I opened a new document and began typing. "Zoya, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Check your login records. You're clever, but not clever enough. Some lessons can't be taught in a classroom. Don't look for me. Mason." I printed the note, placed it on the kitchen counter, and began packing. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, laptop, documents, the encrypted drive with the evidence. I moved quietly, efficiently, like a man who'd been planning this for years instead of hours. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my career analyzing literature, teaching students about character motivation and narrative structure. Now I was the protagonist in my own story, and I finally understood what drove those characters to their decisive moments. It wasn't passion or impulse. It was clarity. I loaded my car in the pre-dawn darkness, the suburban street empty except for the occasional newspaper delivery truck. 23 years in this house. 15 years of marriage. A lifetime of shared memories and accumulated trust. All of it reduced to a stack of network logs and a 2-sentence note. I drove to the university, parked in the empty faculty lot, and sat in my car as the sun rose over the campus where I'd spent my entire adult life. In a few hours, the quad would fill with students rushing to classes, professors clutching coffee and lesson plans, the daily rhythm of academic life continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The man who'd driven here wasn't the same one who'd discovered the login alert 6 hours earlier. That man had been a husband, a professor, a respected member of the university community. This man was something else entirely. My phone buzzed. A text from Zoya. "Where are you? We need to talk." I turned off the phone and dropped it in a campus trash bin. Some conversations weren't worth having. The faculty meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. I arrived early, settling into my usual seat in the conference room where I'd spent countless hours debating curriculum changes and budget allocations. My colleagues filtered in gradually, Professor Williams from the history department, Dr. Chen from linguistics, the usual suspects who comprise the university's academic backbone. Dean Morrison called the meeting to order with her typical efficiency. First item on the agenda is course scheduling for next semester. Mason, I believe you have the English department's proposals? Actually, I said, standing slowly, I have something else to discuss first. The room fell silent. Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly. I wasn't known for disrupting meetings or speaking out of turn. I'm resigning my position, effective immediately. The silence deepened. Williams leaned forward, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. Chen's pen stopped moving across her notepad. "Mason," Morrison said carefully, "this is rather sudden. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No need." I reached into my briefcase and withdrew a manila folder. I've prepared a formal letter of resignation, along with documentation of a conflict of interest that makes my continued employment untenable. I placed copies of the folder in front of each colleague. You'll find network access logs showing that one of my students has been accessing university systems from my personal residence for the past 3 months. The timestamps and frequency of these accesses suggest a relationship that compromises my ability to evaluate his academic work fairly. Morrison opened her folder, scanning the documents. Her expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something approaching alarm. "The student in question is Liam Harper," I continued. "I've included his academic record, showing a marked decline in performance that coincides with these unauthorized access patterns. I'm recommending a full review of his enrollment status and academic standing." "Mason," Williams said quietly, "you don't have to do this here. We can handle this through proper channels." "This is the proper channel." I gathered my briefcase, leaving the folders on the conference table. "I've transferred all my course materials to the shared drive. My replacement can access everything they need." I walked toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. You might want to review the university's policies on faculty spouses dating students. I suspect you'll find some interesting gray areas that need clarification." The hallway outside the conference room seemed longer than usual. My footsteps echoed off the polished floors as I made my way to my former office, to collect the last of my personal items. Word would spread quickly in a community this small. By lunch, everyone would know that Professor Mason Redden had resigned under mysterious circumstances involving a student and some kind of scandal. Let them speculate. The truth would come out eventually, but by then, I'd be long gone. My office looked strange with the personal touches removed. The bookshelves stood empty, my diplomas and awards packed away in boxes. 20 years of academic achievement reduced to a few cardboard containers and a resignation letter. I was loading the last box into my car when I spotted Liam across the quad. He was walking with a group of friends, animated and laughing about something. Young, confident, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. Our eyes met across the distance. His smile faltered, replaced by confusion and something that might have been guilt. He raised his hand in a tentative wave. I ignored him and drove away. The hotel room I'd rented was generic and anonymous, exactly what I needed. I set up my laptop on the small desk and began the next phase of my plan. If I was going to destroy my life, I might as well do it thoroughly. The university's student conduct office had an online reporting system. I filled out the form methodically, attaching the network logs and access records. Allegation: unauthorized use of faculty resources. Supporting evidence, 3 months of documented access violations. The Academic Integrity Office had a similar system. Allegation, possible academic misconduct. Supporting evidence, correlation between unauthorized access and declining academic performance. I filed both reports anonymously, using a VPN and a temporary email account. The investigations would take weeks, but the outcome was inevitable. Liam's academic career was finished. My phone, the new one I'd bought that morning, rang just as I was finishing the reports. "Professor Redden, this is Dean Morrison. We need to talk." "I'm no longer Professor Redden," I said. "Just Mason now." "Mason, then. Look, I understand you're going through something difficult, but resigning like this isn't the answer. We can work something out." "There's nothing to work out. I've made my decision." "What about your tenure? Your pension? You're throwing away your entire career over..." "Over what, Dean Morrison? Over discovering that my wife has been entertaining one of my students in our home for months? Over realizing that my professional judgment has been compromised by personal circumstances beyond my control?" The silence stretched between us. Morrison was a good administrator, but she was also a political creature. She understood the implications of what I'd told her. "I see," she said finally. "And the student in question?" "Will face the consequences of his actions through proper academic channels. I trust the university will handle the matter appropriately." "Mason, if you need time to think about this..." "I've done my thinking. My resignation stands." I ended the call and returned to my laptop. The resignation was just the beginning. I had more work to do. The university directory listed every faculty member's contact information, including personal email addresses. I composed a brief message and sent it to my former colleagues. "Due to personal circumstances, I've resigned my position effective immediately. I want to thank you all for your friendship and support over the years. Please don't attempt to contact me. I need time to process recent events and determine my next steps. Best regards, Mason Redden." Vague enough to avoid legal issues, specific enough to fuel speculation. By tomorrow, the entire faculty would be buzzing with theories about what had happened to their mild-mannered colleague. The truth would emerge eventually. It always did, in a community this small. Zoya would have to explain my sudden departure. Liam would face questions about his academic performance and his relationship with faculty families. The pieces would fall into place, and everyone would understand exactly what had transpired. But by then, I'd be executing the next phase of my plan. I pulled up the university's event calendar, scrolling through upcoming lectures, conferences, and social gatherings. There, next Friday evening, the annual charity auction for the local literacy foundation, held in the campus event center. I'd attended this event for years, usually with Zoya. It was the kind of gathering where the university community mingled with local philanthropists and community leaders, the perfect place to make new connections, the perfect place to meet someone new. I opened a new browser tab and began researching the Literacy Foundation's board of directors. I needed to understand the social dynamics, identify the key players, and prepare for my debut as a single man. The old Mason would have found this calculating approach distasteful. The old Mason believed in honest communication and working through problems together. The old Mason was gone. The Literacy Foundation's offices occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian mansion downtown, the kind of repurposed building that screamed tasteful nonprofit organization. I climbed the narrow stairs, my footsteps muffled by worn carpet that had probably been elegant 20 years ago. "Mr. Redden?" The receptionist looked up from her computer with the practiced smile of someone who spent her days managing volunteers and donors. "Ms. Tran is expecting you." Emily Tran's office was small but well organized, with built-in bookshelves and a window overlooking the foundation's community garden. She stood as I entered, extending her hand with the kind of firm handshake that suggested both confidence and genuine warmth. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "I have to admit, I was surprised to receive your call. We don't often hear from university faculty directly." "I'm between positions at the moment," I said, settling into the chair. It seemed like a good time to explore other ways to contribute to the community. Emily was younger than I'd expected. Early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to assess everything around her. She wore minimal makeup and a simple blue dress that suggested someone who cared more about substance than appearance. "Your background in English literature could be valuable for our adult literacy programs," she said, consulting a folder on her desk. "We're always looking for volunteers who can help with reading comprehension and writing skills." "I'd be interested in that," I said, "but I was hoping to contribute in other ways as well. I understand you have a board position opening up." Her eyebrows rose slightly. You've done your research. Yes, we're looking for someone with educational background to join our board of directors. The position involves fundraising, program oversight, and strategic planning. I have experience with all of those areas. 20 years in academic administration teaches you how to work with budgets and donors. 20 years? She leaned back in her chair, studying me more carefully. You seem young for that level of experience. I started early, finished my PhD at 25, and went straight into teaching and administration. We talked for another hour about the Foundation's programs, funding challenges, and long-term goals. Emily was passionate about literacy education, speaking with the kind of enthusiasm that came from genuine commitment rather than professional obligation. She'd started as a volunteer while working on her master's degree in social work, then joined the staff full-time after graduation. The board meets monthly, she said as our conversation wound down. The next meeting is Thursday evening. Would you be interested in attending as an observer? Absolutely. She walked me to the door, pausing at the reception desk to collect a folder of materials. These will give you a better sense of our current programs and initiatives. And Mason, may I call you Mason? I appreciate your interest. We need more people who understand the connection between education and community development. I was halfway to my car when I heard my name called from across the street. I turned to see a familiar figure approaching, Dr. Jennifer Walsh from the university's psychology department. Mason, what are you doing downtown? Jennifer was one of those colleagues I'd always liked but never quite connected with. Friendly enough at faculty gatherings, but our paths rarely crossed outside of university functions. Just exploring some volunteer opportunities, I said, gesturing toward the Foundation building, taking advantage of having some free time. Free time? Her expression shifted to concern. I heard you'd resigned, but I thought maybe it was just sabbatical rumors. Are you okay? I'm fine, just needed a change of direction. If you don't mind me asking, what happened? You seemed so settled in the department, and then suddenly... Personal circumstances, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Jennifer nodded, but I could see the curiosity in her eyes. She was a psychologist, trained to read between the lines and identify underlying patterns. She'd probably already heard the rumors about my sudden departure and was trying to piece together the real story. Well, she said finally, if you need someone to talk to, you know where to find me. And Mason, whatever's going on, don't make any major decisions while you're processing. Give yourself time to think things through. I thanked her and drove back to my hotel, Jennifer's words echoing in my mind. Don't make major decisions while processing. Sound advice, probably. The old Mason would have appreciated the psychological insight and taken it to heart, but the old Mason hadn't discovered his wife's affair through network access logs. The old Mason hadn't resigned his tenured position in front of his colleagues. The old Mason hadn't spent 3 days planning the systematic destruction of his former life. The old Mason was gone, and I had no intention of bringing him back. That evening, I spread the Foundation materials across my hotel room desk and began studying them like academic texts. Board member biographies, financial reports, program evaluations, donor lists. The information painted a picture of a well-run organization with strong community connections and ambitious goals. Emily Tran's biography was brief but impressive. Master's degree in social work from the State University. 5 years with the Foundation, promoted to executive director 2 years ago. Volunteer experience with 3 other nonprofit organizations. No mention of personal life or family. I opened my laptop and began researching her background more thoroughly. Social media profiles, professional associations, local news coverage of Foundation events. The picture that emerged was of someone dedicated to her work, well respected in the nonprofit community, and notably private about her personal life. Perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mason, this is Zoya. We need to talk. Call me. I deleted the message without responding. Some conversations weren't worth having, and some bridges were meant to burn completely. Instead, I opened a new document and began drafting my application for the Foundation's board position. 20 years of academic writing had taught me how to present myself persuasively on paper. I outlined my educational background, administrative experience, and commitment to literacy education. I also mentioned my recent career transition, framing it as an opportunity to focus on community service and philanthropic work. No need to mention the circumstances that had led to this transition. That story would come out eventually, but on my timeline, not theirs. The application was due by the end of the week. That gave me 4 days to prepare for the board meeting and position myself as the ideal candidate. 4 days to begin building the new life that would replace the one I'd left behind. 4 days to begin my revenge. The Foundation's board meeting took place in a conference room at the downtown library, a neutral space that reflected the organization's community focus. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that suggested both professionalism and attention to detail. Emily was already there, setting up materials and arranging chairs around a rectangular table. She looked up as I entered, offering the same warm smile I remembered from our first meeting. "Mason, thank you for coming. I think you'll find this group interesting. We have a good mix of backgrounds and perspectives." The other board members filtered in gradually. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a retired physician who served as board president. James Morrison, a local business owner who handled the Foundation's financial oversight. Sarah Chen, a lawyer who managed legal and compliance issues. Michael Torres, a high school principal who provided educational expertise. And then, just as Emily was calling the meeting to order, one more person slipped through the door, Liam Harper. He spotted me immediately, his face cycling through surprise, confusion, and something approaching panic. I kept my expression neutral, nodding slightly as if acknowledging a casual acquaintance. "Sorry I'm late," Liam said, taking a seat at the far end of the table. "Traffic was terrible." Emily introduced me to the group as a prospective board member, outlining my academic background and interest in literacy education. I gave a brief presentation about my qualifications, focusing on budget management and program development while carefully avoiding any mention of my recent resignation. "Mr. Redden brings exactly the kind of educational expertise we need," Dr. Hendricks said after I'd finished. "Your experience with curriculum development could be valuable for our adult learning programs." "I agree," said Torres. "We've been looking for someone who understands both the academic and administrative sides of education." Liam remained silent throughout the discussion, but I could feel his eyes on me. He was probably trying to figure out what I was doing here, whether my presence was coincidental or something more calculated. He was right to be concerned. The meeting proceeded through the usual nonprofit agenda items, budget reports, program updates, upcoming fundraising events. I participated actively but not aggressively, asking thoughtful questions and offering constructive suggestions. The goal was to demonstrate competence without appearing overeager. "Our annual gala is coming up in 6 weeks," Emily said, consulting her notes. "We're expecting about 200 guests, including major donors and community leaders. It's our biggest fundraising event of the year." "What's the theme this year?" asked Sarah Chen. "Celebrating local heroes. We're honoring individuals who've made significant contributions to literacy and education in our community." I leaned forward slightly. "That sounds like an excellent opportunity to strengthen community partnerships. Have you considered inviting university faculty and administration? There might be opportunities for collaboration between the Foundation and academic institutions." Emily's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. We've had limited connection with the university in the past." "I could help facilitate those relationships," I offered. "Even though I'm no longer on faculty, I still have contacts in the academic community." Liam shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He knew exactly what contacts I had in the academic community, and he probably suspected that those relationships had been complicated by recent events. After the meeting, board members lingered for informal conversation over coffee and cookies. I found myself in a small group with Emily and Dr. Hendricks discussing potential collaboration between the Foundation and local schools. "Your background would be perfect for our education committee," Dr. Hendricks said. "We're trying to develop more structured partnerships with area institutions." "I'd be honored to contribute," I replied. "Education has been my life's work. I'm excited to approach it from a different angle." Emily smiled. "I think you'd be a great addition to our board. The formal vote is next week, but I'm confident it will be unanimous." Across the room, Liam was gathering his materials with obvious haste. He caught my eye and started to approach, then seemed to think better of it and headed for the door instead. I excused myself from the conversation and followed him into the parking lot. "Professor Redden," he said, turning to face me with forced casualness. "What a surprise seeing you here." "Just Mason now," I corrected. "I'm no longer with the university." "Right, I heard about that. People say a lot of things. Most of it isn't worth repeating." He shifted his weight nervously. "Look, about what happened?" "Nothing happened, Liam. That's the beauty of it. You accessed university systems from an unauthorized location. I reported a potential security violation. The administration is handling it through proper channels." "But you know it wasn't just about computer access." "Do I? All I know is what the logs show. Everything else is speculation." I could see him struggling to find the right words, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was willing to say. The old dynamic between us, professor and student, authority and subordinate, was gone, replaced by something more complex and dangerous. Emily seems nice, I said, changing the subject. How long have you been volunteering with the foundation? About 6 months. I needed community service hours for my internship program. Ah, yes. Your internship. How is that going, by the way? Still on track for graduation? His face paled slightly. He'd probably been contacted by the Academic Integrity Office by now, informed that his enrollment status was under review pending investigation of possible misconduct. It's fine, he said. Everything's fine. Good to hear. Well, I should let you go. I'm sure you have studying to do. I walked to my car, leaving him standing alone in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see him pulling out his phone, probably calling Zoya to report this unexpected encounter. Let him call. Let them both wonder what I was planning and how much I knew. Uncertainty was a weapon, and I intended to use it. Back at my hotel, I opened my laptop and began researching the Foundation's gala in more detail. The event was held annually at the university's Alumni Center, an elegant venue overlooking the campus quad. Past galas had featured prominent speakers, silent auctions, and awards presentations recognizing community leaders. This year's honorees hadn't been announced yet, but I had some ideas about who might be worthy of recognition. Emily's dedication to literacy education certainly qualified her for acknowledgement. Her work with the foundation had transformed dozens of lives, providing educational opportunities for adults who'd been failed by traditional systems. She deserved recognition. She deserved celebration. She deserved someone who would appreciate her dedication and support her mission. Someone unlike Liam Harper, who'd been volunteering for 6 months without making any meaningful contribution to the organization's goals. Someone unlike my soon-to-be ex-wife, who viewed community service as a networking opportunity rather than a genuine commitment to helping others. I opened a new document and began drafting a proposal for the gala's organizing committee. A suggestion for this year's keynote speaker, someone who could speak eloquently about the connection between education and community development, someone who was recently available and eager to contribute to the Foundation's mission, someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. 3 weeks later, I was standing in Emily's office again, but this time the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer a prospective volunteer seeking ways to contribute. I was a board member with voting rights and committee responsibilities. The transition had been seamless, aided by my academic credentials and what Dr. Hendricks had called my refreshing perspective on educational partnerships. The gala planning is coming together nicely, Emily said, spreading vendor contracts and seating charts across her desk. Catering is confirmed, the silent auction has 43 items so far, and we've sold 60% of the available tickets. What about the keynote speaker? That's actually why I wanted to meet with you today. She looked up from the papers, her expression mixing excitement with slight apprehension. The committee loved your suggestion about having a local education professional speak about community literacy initiatives. Good. Have you identified potential candidates? We have. Actually, we'd like you to consider giving the keynote address yourself. I kept my expression neutral, though internally I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was exactly what I'd hoped for when I'd submitted the proposal, but the invitation needed to appear spontaneous rather than orchestrated. I'm honored by the consideration, I said carefully, but I'm not sure I'm the right choice. I'm new to the foundation, and my recent career transition might raise questions about my qualifications. That's exactly why you're perfect, Emily said, leaning forward with enthusiasm. Your transition from academic life to community service represents the kind of commitment we want to celebrate. You've literally put your money where your mouth is when it comes to supporting literacy education. If you think it would serve the Foundation's interests, I'm willing to consider it. I think it would be perfect. The theme is celebrating local heroes, and you embody that spirit, someone who's dedicated their career to education and is now channeling that expertise into community service. We spent the next hour discussing the speech's focus and tone. Emily wanted something inspirational but grounded, highlighting the connection between individual literacy and community development. I suggested incorporating personal stories about students I'd taught, the transformative power of education, and the importance of supporting adult learners who were pursuing second chances. There's something else I wanted to discuss, Emily said as our meeting was winding down. It's more personal than professional. I waited, keeping my expression open and interested. I've been thinking about our conversation last week, about work-life balance and finding time for relationships outside of professional commitments. We'd had dinner together twice in the past 10 days, ostensibly to discuss foundation business, but the conversations had gradually become more personal. Emily had mentioned her tendency to prioritize work over personal relationships, while I'd shared carefully edited details about my recent life changes. I've been thinking about that too, I said. I don't usually date people I work with. It complicates things professionally, but we're both adults, and the foundation isn't exactly a traditional workplace. What are you suggesting? She smiled, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. I'm suggesting that maybe we could have dinner sometime without discussing literacy statistics or fundraising strategies. I'd like that very much. We agreed to meet Saturday evening at a restaurant downtown, away from the foundation offices and university campus. A proper date, with no pretense of professional necessity. I left Emily's office feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and guilt. The satisfaction was straightforward. My plan was working exactly as I'd hoped. I'd established myself in Emily's professional and personal circles, positioned myself as someone worthy of respect and affection. The guilt was more complicated. Emily was genuinely kind, intelligent, and dedicated to meaningful work. She deserved better than being used as an instrument of revenge against people she didn't even know existed. But the old Mason might have been troubled by such ethical considerations. The new Mason understood that collateral damage was inevitable when you were rebuilding your life from scratch. That evening, I drove past my former house for the first time since leaving. Zoya's car was in the driveway, along with a red Honda Civic that I recognized as Liam's. The living room lights were on, and I could see silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Two figures sitting close together on the couch where Zoya and I had spent countless evenings watching movies and grading papers. They'd made themselves comfortable in the ruins of my former life. Now it was time for them to discover what I'd been building to replace it. I parked across the street and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number for the university's student newspaper. The editor was a sharp young woman named Rebecca Martinez, who'd taken my journalism ethics seminar 2 years earlier. Professor Redden? Rebecca sounded surprised to hear from me. I heard you'd left the university. I did. I'm calling about a potential story, something that might interest your readers about the connection between academic integrity and community service. What kind of story? Have you heard about the Literacy Foundation's upcoming gala? They're honoring local education heroes, including some interesting connections to the university community. I gave her just enough information to pique her interest. The foundation's work, the gala's theme, and the potential for a feature story about university faculty involvement in local nonprofit organizations. I mentioned that I'd be giving the keynote address, framing it as an example of how former faculty members continued contributing to education even after leaving academic positions. That could be a great story, Rebecca said, especially with all the budget cuts and discussions about the university's community engagement. When is the event? 3 weeks from Saturday. I could arrange press credentials if you're interested in covering it. Definitely. And Mr. Redden, congratulations on the speaking engagement. It sounds like you found a good way to stay involved in education. After ending the call, I sat in my car for another few minutes, watching the house where I'd spent 15 years of my life. The silhouettes had moved to the kitchen now, probably preparing dinner together, playing house in the space that had once been mine. Let them enjoy it while they could. In 3 weeks, at the Literacy Foundation's annual gala, I would stand before 200 community leaders and deliver a keynote address about education, service, and second chances. Emily would be there, proud of the Foundation's newest board member and excited about our developing relationship. And if I'd calculated correctly, Liam would be there too, watching from the volunteer section as the professor whose life he'd helped destroy claimed a new position of respect and influence. Watching as I began the next chapter of my life with the woman he'd been pursuing for months without success. Some lessons couldn't be taught in a classroom, but they could be demonstrated with perfect clarity in front of an audience that included everyone who mattered. The restaurant Emily had chosen was intimate without being pretentious, white tablecloths and candlelight, but with a relaxed atmosphere that encouraged conversation rather than formal dining performance. She arrived wearing a simple black dress that suggested she'd put thought into the evening without overdoing it. "You look lovely," I said, standing to pull out her chair. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." We ordered wine and settled into the kind of conversation that flows naturally between two people discovering they enjoy each other's company. Emily talked about her path from social work student to foundation director, her passion for adult literacy programs, and her hopes for expanding the organization's reach. I shared carefully edited stories from my academic career, focusing on rewarding moments with students and the satisfaction of seeing young minds develop critical thinking skills. I avoided mentioning the circumstances of my departure, framing my career transition as a positive choice rather than a reaction to personal crisis. "Can I ask you something personal?" Emily said as we finished our main courses. "Of course." "You've mentioned being between relationships, but you haven't talked about what ended your last serious relationship. I hope that's not too forward. I just like to understand where people are coming from." I'd been expecting this question and had prepared for it carefully. The truth was too complicated and potentially damaging, but outright lies would eventually be discovered in a community this small. I was married for 15 years, I said. It ended recently when I discovered my wife was having an affair with one of my students. Emily's expression shifted to sympathy and concern. Oh, Mason, I'm so sorry. That must have been devastating. It was difficult. The personal betrayal was bad enough, but the professional implications made it impossible for me to continue in my position. I couldn't fairly evaluate the student's work, and staying would have created ongoing conflicts of interest. Is that why you resigned? Partly. I also realized I needed a complete change. New environment, new challenges, new perspectives on what I wanted to do with my life. That takes courage. A lot of people would have tried to stick it out, fight for their position. Fighting would have meant staying connected to a situation that was toxic for everyone involved. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to walk away and build something new. Emily reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. Their loss is our gain. The foundation is lucky to have you. The gesture was simple but meaningful, a moment of genuine connection that made my chest tighten with an emotion I hadn't expected to feel. Emily's kindness was real, her interest in me appeared genuine, and her touch carried no agenda beyond offering comfort. For a moment, I almost told her the truth, about the network logs and the calculated resignation, about the academic integrity complaints I'd filed against Liam, about the fact that my interest in the foundation had begun as research for a revenge plan rather than authentic commitment to literacy education. Instead, I squeezed her hand gently and smiled. Thank you. That means more than you know. We talked for another hour, the conversation ranging from professional goals to personal interests to shared observations about the quirks of nonprofit work. Emily was intelligent without being pretentious, passionate about her work without being obsessive, and funny in a way that suggested genuine wit rather than practiced charm. I found myself genuinely enjoying her company, which complicated my feelings about what I was doing. The plan had always involved using Emily as an instrument of revenge against Liam, but I hadn't anticipated actually liking her as much as I did. I have a confession, Emily said as we were waiting for dessert. I did some research on you after our first meeting. Oh? I looked up your academic publications, read some of your articles about literature and critical thinking. You're a really good writer, clear, engaging, intellectually rigorous without being dry. Thank you. What prompted the research? Professional curiosity, initially. I wanted to understand your background better before recommending you for the board position. She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. But then it became more personal. I found myself wanting to know more about you as a person, not just as a potential colleague. And what did you discover? That you've had a distinguished career, that your colleagues respect your work, and that you care deeply about education and student development. She met my eyes directly. I also discovered that your recent departure from the university was sudden and unexpected, which made me wonder what really happened. I felt a moment of panic, wondering how much she'd learned and whether my carefully constructed narrative was about to collapse. I didn't find many details, Emily continued, which actually made me respect you more. In a community this small, the fact that you managed to leave without creating a scandal suggests you handled whatever happened with dignity and discretion. I tried to do the right thing for everyone involved. That's exactly what I would have expected from you. We finished dinner and walked slowly to the parking garage, neither of us eager to end the evening. Emily stopped beside her car and turned to face me. I had a wonderful time tonight, she said. So did I. Would you like to do this again? Very much. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped closer. Mason, I want you to know that I don't take relationships lightly. I've been hurt before by people who weren't honest about their intentions or their emotional availability. I understand. I'm telling you this because I like you, really like you, and I want to be clear about what I'm hoping for. I'm not interested in casual dating or being someone's rebound relationship. The words hit harder than I'd expected. Emily was asking for honesty about my intentions, and I was planning to use her as a weapon against people she didn't even know existed. She was asking for emotional authenticity from someone whose entire presence in her life was based on calculation and deception. I like you too, I said, which was true even if it wasn't the complete truth. I'm not looking for anything casual either. She smiled and kissed me softly, a brief but meaningful contact that felt like a promise of something more. I'll see you at the board meeting Thursday, she said, getting into her car. I watched her drive away, then sat in my own car for several minutes before starting the engine. The evening had been perfect, exactly what I'd hoped for when I'd begun pursuing Emily as part of my revenge against Liam. So why did I feel like I was the one being betrayed? The university's Alumni Center had been transformed for the Literacy Foundation's annual gala. White linens covered round tables arranged around a small stage, while silent auction items lined the perimeter walls. Soft lighting and carefully arranged flowers created an atmosphere of elegant philanthropy, the kind of event where community leaders could feel good about supporting a worthy cause while enjoying excellent food and wine. I stood near the registration table, greeting guests and accepting congratulations on my upcoming keynote address. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of preparation, writing and rehearsing my speech, coordinating with the event planners, and spending increasingly frequent evenings with Emily as our relationship developed beyond the initial stages of dating. "Mason, you look nervous," Emily said, appearing at my elbow with a glass of wine. She was radiant in a midnight blue dress that complemented her dark hair, which she'd styled more formally for the evening. "Not nervous, just focused," I replied, accepting the wine gratefully. "I want to do justice to the Foundation's mission." "You will. I've read your speech. It's perfect." The speech was indeed perfect, crafted to highlight my commitment to education while subtly positioning me as someone who'd overcome personal adversity to find new purpose in community service. It would establish my credibility with the audience while demonstrating to Emily that I was worthy of her respect and affection. It would also serve another purpose that Emily didn't know about. "Dr. Redden," a young woman with a press badge approached us. "I'm Rebecca Martinez from the university newspaper. We spoke about covering tonight's event?" "Of course, Rebecca. Thank you for coming." I turned to Emily. Rebecca was one of my journalism students. She's doing a feature story about the connection between the university and local nonprofit organizations. "That's wonderful," Emily said, shaking Rebecca's hand. "The Foundation would love more visibility in the campus community." "I'm particularly interested in your keynote speaker," Rebecca said to Emily while looking at me. "It's not often that former faculty members transition so successfully into nonprofit leadership roles." "Mason has been a tremendous addition to our board," Emily replied. "His educational background and commitment to literacy make him perfect for this role." As Rebecca moved away to photograph the silent auction displays, I scanned the room for familiar faces. Several of my former university colleagues had purchased tickets, along with the usual collection of local business leaders and philanthropists who supported the Foundation's work. And there, near the bar, stood Liam Harper. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit that suggested a limited budget, probably borrowed or purchased at a discount store. His hair was longer than university standards typically allowed, and he looked thinner than I remembered. The physical toll of academic stress and uncertain prospects. Our eyes met across the room. He raised his hand in a tentative wave, then started walking in my direction. "Mason," Emily said quietly, following my gaze. "Do you know that young man? He's one of our volunteers, but he seems to be staring at you." "We've met," I said. "He's a former student of mine." Liam reached us just as Emily was called away to handle a catering issue. We stood facing each other in the middle of the elegant gathering, former teacher and student now meeting on very different terms. "Professor Redden," Liam said formally, "congratulations on your speaking engagement." "Thank you, Liam. I'm surprised to see you here. I didn't realize you were still volunteering with the Foundation." "I needed the community service hours for my degree requirements." He paused, then added quietly, "Assuming I'm still able to complete my degree." "Having academic difficulties?" "You know exactly what difficulties I'm having. The integrity review, the investigation into my computer access patterns, the questions about my relationship with faculty families." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear you're having problems. Academic integrity issues can be quite serious. This isn't about academic integrity, and you know it. This is about revenge." "Revenge for what, Liam?" "You accessed university systems from an unauthorized location. I reported a potential security violation. Everything that happened after that was the result of proper administrative procedures. You destroyed my academic career because I—" He stopped himself, glancing around at the other guests. "Because you what?" He struggled for a moment, clearly wanting to say more, but aware that we were surrounded by people who might overhear. "You know what you did," he said finally. "I know what I did, yes. I followed proper procedures when I discovered evidence of policy violations. I resigned my position to avoid conflicts of interest. I've moved on with my life and found new ways to contribute to the community." Emily returned, looking between us with curiosity. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I said. Liam was just congratulating me on my transition to nonprofit work." "That's nice of you, Liam," Emily said warmly. "Mason has been such an asset to the Foundation. We're lucky to have someone with his experience and dedication." Liam's face went pale. He looked at Emily, then at me, then back at Emily. I could see the realization dawning. This wasn't just about my involvement with the foundation. This was about my relationship with the woman he'd been unsuccessfully pursuing for months. "Ms. Tran," he said carefully, "how long have you and Professor Redden been working together?" "About 2 months now. Mason joined our board right after I met him, and he's been instrumental in developing our university partnerships." Emily smiled at me with obvious affection. "Plus, he's giving tonight's keynote address, which should be wonderful." 2 months, Liam repeated quietly. "Yes, it's been a very productive partnership." Emily's hand brushed mine briefly, a casual gesture of intimacy that wasn't lost on Liam. "I should go check on the catering situation. Liam, thank you for volunteering tonight. Mason, I'll see you before your speech." After Emily left, Liam and I stood in silence for a moment. The elegant chatter of the gala continued around us, but I could feel the tension radiating from the young man who'd helped destroy my marriage. "You planned this," he said finally. "Planned what?" "All of it. Joining the foundation, getting on the board, pursuing Emily. You knew I was volunteering here, knew I was interested in her." "Did you really think you had a chance with her, Liam? A graduate student with a questionable academic record and no real prospects?" "She's a good person. She doesn't deserve to be used in whatever game you're playing." "You're right. She is a good person. She deserves someone who respects her work and supports her goals, someone who's accomplished something meaningful with his life." "Someone like you?" "Someone exactly like me." The announcement came over the sound system that dinner would be served shortly. Guests began moving toward their assigned tables, the casual cocktail hour giving way to the evening's formal program. "This isn't over," Liam said as he turned to leave. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over for months. You just didn't realize it yet." I watched him walk away, noting the slump of his shoulders and the defeated pace of his steps. The young man who'd once been my star student, who'd charmed his way into my home and my wife's bed, was now reduced to borrowed formal wear and empty threats. The transformation was deeply satisfying. Emily appeared at my side, slipping her arm through mine. "Ready for your big moment?" "Absolutely." As we walked toward the head table, I caught sight of Rebecca Martinez positioning herself near the stage with her camera ready. The university newspaper would run a feature story about the gala, highlighting the foundation's work and my keynote address. The story would be picked up by other local media, spreading word about my successful transition from academia to nonprofit leadership. Zoya would read about it. She'd see the photos of Emily and me together, understand that I'd not only survived the destruction of our marriage, but had thrived in its aftermath. She'd realize that while she was playing house with a disgraced student, I was building a new life with someone who actually mattered in the community. The evening's program began with Emily's welcome remarks, followed by recognition of major donors and volunteers. I sat at the head table, accepting congratulations from board members and community leaders who praised my commitment to literacy education. When Emily introduced me as the keynote speaker, the applause was warm and sustained. I walked to the podium feeling completely in control of the narrative I was about to present. "Good evening," I began, looking out over the audience of 200 guests. "I want to talk tonight about second chances and about the courage it takes to rebuild your life when everything you thought you knew about yourself turns out to be wrong." In the back of the room, Liam Harper stood with the other volunteers, watching the professor whose life he'd helped destroy claim a position of honor and respect, watching me begin the final phase of my revenge. 6 months later, I stood in the same alumni center where I'd delivered the keynote address, but this time the space was decorated for a wedding reception. White roses and candlelight had replaced the foundation's fundraising displays, and the guest list included many of the same community leaders who'd attended the gala. Only now they were celebrating Emily's and my marriage instead of supporting literacy education. The ceremony had taken place that afternoon in the university's historic chapel, with Dr. Hendricks officiating and the foundation board serving as our wedding party. Emily had looked radiant in a simple but elegant dress, and I'd felt a complex mixture of genuine happiness and calculated satisfaction as we exchanged vows. The happiness was real. Emily was everything I'd hoped for in a partner: intelligent, compassionate, successful in her own right, and genuinely supportive of my goals and ambitions. Our relationship had developed naturally from professional collaboration to personal intimacy, and I found myself looking forward to building a life with her. The satisfaction was more complicated. This wedding represented the culmination of a plan that had begun with network access logs and a resignation letter. Every element had been carefully orchestrated: my involvement with the foundation, my pursuit of Emily, my positioning as a respected community leader. And the view from the reception hall's windows made the satisfaction complete. "Mason, come meet my cousin from Portland," Emily said, appearing at my elbow with a middle-aged woman who'd traveled across the country for our wedding. I spent the next hour circulating among guests, accepting congratulations and making small talk about our honeymoon plans and future goals. The conversations were pleasant but routine, the social obligations that came with any wedding reception. But I kept finding myself drawn to the windows that overlooked the campus quad. Across the green space, clearly visible from our reception, stood the university's administration building where Zoya worked as an assistant dean. Her office was on the third floor, and though I couldn't see into the windows from this distance, I knew she was there. She worked late most evenings, trying to rebuild her career after the scandal that had followed my departure. The scandal had been subtle, but devastating. Word had spread quickly through the university community about the circumstances of my resignation. A respected professor driven from his position by his wife's affair with a student. The details had been whispered in faculty lounges and discussed at dinner parties, creating a narrative that cast Zoya as the villain and me as the wronged party. Liam had fared even worse. The academic integrity investigation had resulted in his suspension and eventual expulsion from the university. His graduate program had been terminated, his thesis advisor had withdrawn support, and his prospects for admission to other institutions had been destroyed by the misconduct findings on his academic record. He'd left town 3 months ago, returning to his parents' home in another state with no degree, no prospects, and no future in academia. "You seem distracted," Emily said, joining me by the windows. "Everything all right?" "Just thinking about how much has changed in the past year," I replied, putting my arm around her waist. "Good changes?" "The best changes. A year ago, I thought my life was over. Tonight, I'm married to an amazing woman and starting fresh with unlimited possibilities." Emily smiled and kissed me softly. "I love you, Mr. Redden." "I love you too, Mrs. Redden." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself standing alone by the windows one final time. The campus was quiet now, most of the administrative buildings dark except for scattered office lights where dedicated staff members worked late into the evening, including the light in Zoya's third-floor office. I imagined her sitting at her desk, processing paperwork or preparing for tomorrow's meetings, trying to focus on her responsibilities while the sounds of our wedding reception drifted across the quad. She would know what was happening. News of my marriage to Emily had been featured in the local newspaper's society section, complete with photos and details about our relationship. She would understand that while she was working late in a job that had become a source of professional isolation rather than advancement, I was celebrating the beginning of a new life with someone who represented everything she'd never been, genuinely accomplished, respected in the community, and committed to meaningful work rather than personal advancement. The irony was perfect. Zoya had destroyed our marriage for a meaningless affair with a student who'd offered nothing but physical attraction and ego gratification. In return, she'd lost her husband, her reputation, her social standing, and her prospects for professional growth. Meanwhile, I'd not only survived the destruction of my previous life, but had built something better from the ruins. A new career that utilized my skills while serving a meaningful purpose. A new relationship with someone who shared my values and supported my goals. A new position in the community that brought respect and influence. "Ready to go?" Emily asked, appearing beside me with her purse and wrap. "Absolutely." We said our final goodbyes to the remaining guests and walked to the parking garage where my car was waiting. As we drove away from the Alumni Center, I caught one last glimpse of the administration building in my rearview mirror. The light in Zoya's office was still on. "Where are you taking me, husband?" Emily asked playfully as we left the campus. "Somewhere we can start our new life together," I replied. And I meant it. The revenge was complete, but the future was just beginning. Emily and I would build something lasting and meaningful together. A partnership based on mutual respect, shared goals, and genuine affection. The fact that this partnership had begun as an instrument of revenge against people who'd betrayed me was simply part of the story's origin. What mattered now was where we went from here. Behind us, the university campus grew smaller in the distance, along with the remnants of my previous life. Ahead lay unlimited possibilities with a woman who deserved the best I had to offer. Some lessons couldn't be taught in a classroom, but they could be demonstrated with perfect clarity through the choices we made and the lives we built. And this lesson was now complete. The old Mason Redden, the trusting husband, the naive professor, the man who'd believed in honesty and forgiveness, was gone forever. In his place stood someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't destruction, but construction. Building something so beautiful and successful that your enemies could only watch in helpless envy. Someone who'd learned that sometimes the most devastating thing you could do to people who'd wronged you was to prove that you were better off without them. The wedding reception was over, but the real celebration was just beginning.